All right, my friends, so I'm driving back from Georgia Tech, just dropping my daughter off. I don't know if you can see outside here. I guess you can't really see it. It's her second semester at Tech. This semester she'll be a TA, a teacher's assistant in computer science, which is pretty cool. There's the North. It might be Cobb County. Yeah, it's Cobb County. Or that? No, we haven't gone through Buckhead. I'll show you what it looks like when we go through Buckhead. Georgia Tech's in Midtown. Then Atlanta's kind of like Phoenix, where it's spread out. The whole downtown is a bunch of different areas that are spread out, so you don't get this one huge downtown like in Boston. Here is spread out among many different areas like Cobb County, Midtown, downtown, Buckhead, and whatnot. Well, anyway, so we're pretty excited for her being a TA. She doesn't get paid this semester. She gets credit, which is still pretty cool. Next semester, she will get paid, I think, $8 or something like that an hour. For a TA, for a young lady in computer science at Tech, that's pretty stellar. I'm pretty proud of her for sure. I mean, it's not, she wasn't by any stretch of the imagination raised by computer geniuses. Let me tell you that right now. But for her to be able to do programming and whatnot is freaking awesome. I'm stoked for her. Now I do have 3 other kids coming up behind, and those kids have their own individual, unique points that they can focus on when their career. One is very good. My dyslexic, Kevin, very good at putting a Lego together. He can put a Lego together in 2 seconds flat. He just has an intellectual capacity for that, where I do not. Liam, my youngest, he's definitely got a mathematical brain. I mean, he can pull numbers together quicker than I can blink an eye. Chloe, she's just an extrovert. She gets energy by being around people and loves hanging out. And that all of them have unique positive traits, and they all have unique negative traits too. If you think about it, that's what just makes it great. God makes us all individually unique, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing to behold. Especially when you realize that each person is unique and has a value added. It's awesome. People are not liabilities, just as an FYI. People are assets. And if you look at people as liabilities, I don't know how you go back and get on your knees and say, God, you created things that are liabilities as opposed to things that are assets. Because if we're created in God's will and God's vision, we all have something to offer for sure. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is, so I posted my videos on Ricky the trucker. When can he retire? Can he retire at 60? And I got a lot of feedback on health insurance and like, oh, you shouldn't do it because of health insurance. And this is feedback from, let me see if I can show you. There comes Buckhead here. And this is, I don't know if y'all can see that or not. So basically with Buckhead, you go underneath the buildings. 20 years ago, Buckhead was like a party town. It's like where all the riffraff came to party and hang out. And now it's just, it's huge in terms of the value. It's the hoity-toity part of Atlanta for sure. Buckhead. It's the north part of Atlanta. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to see it. All right. But anyway, so I'm literally under the bridge right now that goes under the big buildings for Buckhead. Anyway, so now each person's unique when it comes to their own planning. I get that. Going back to what you said about individuals. So your individual circumstance could certainly vary for sure. And my man CB from California posted about his own parents, how they ran out of money at 80, and that has a big impact on him. Absolutely, on his ability to retire early and his desire to make sure that there's nothing left to chance. And I got no problem with that. Each person has their own experience to go through. My own unique perspective is I get scared of cold because I grew up in Maine and we had no heat. And I remember legs going home to no heat, how it scared the heck out of me. I weren't worried about freezing to death. One of my cats froze. Who's a kitty or Raider? I think it's Raider, my cat, and he froze to death. And it scares me to death. CB seeing what his parents go through. Being running out of money scares him to death. And man, I get that 100%. I don't have any qualm with your anecdotal evidence to dictate what you do for your own planning. I got none. My concern though is and this isn't a thing on CB, my concern is how many people just follow the model of financial planning and saying, I have to have healthcare, I have to have healthcare, I have to have healthcare. And I can't quit my crappy old job, which is literally putting me in the grave because my crappy old job provides healthcare. And I just find that sad. I use an example, the guy I was working with out in Cleveland, and he was commuting and he was putting on pounds, he's putting on weight, blood pressure was going up, and he felt he couldn't quit because of the health care. the hospital for which he worked provided. And he could. I mean, he might not retire, and that's, retiring doesn't mean you're just going and sitting on the porch watching nothing. It just means you're quitting that crappy old job. So as we talked, I said, man, maybe you could go work for another accounting firm. They might only pay you $10 an hour, but you do that for a couple of years until Medicare kicks in. I mean, you have the financial resources to do that. If healthcare is the issue that's holding you back from retiring, there are other firms that can provide healthcare for catastrophic cost that you don't have to commute an hour and a half each way to Cleveland, and you can still have healthcare provided. I mean, yes, you will take a hit in income, but it'll A, reduce your commute, and B, it'll increase the quality of your life, which you'll see make your health better. Maybe that's something to consider. Or maybe you don't need health care. I mean, what is this now that we have to have health care? Immigrants come to this country don't all have health care, and yet they come here, they do just fine. Maybe they do it because they have more of a community approach. Maybe they do it because they realize they're not likely to get hurt. I don't know the answer. But people don't have health care throughout history. And all of a sudden, just the last 20 years, we've been ingrained to think we have to have health care. Health care, or else we can't retire. I don't understand that. So let me use myself as an example. I've got Medishare. My wife and myself, my wife, and my 4 kids, we have Medishare. It's $350 a month in premiums. Now, it doesn't include vision, and it doesn't include dental. All right, so all that stuff we pay out of pocket. It ain't cheap, I'll tell you that right now. But that's what insurance is supposed to be. It's supposed to be covering you for catastrophic illness. It's not supposed to cover you so you can go get your oil changed and you file a health insurance claim. That's not the way it's supposed to work. That merge from a 285 to 400 in Atlanta has got to be the silliest, stupidest merge there ever has been in the history of mankind. For the love of me, I don't understand the engineers who designed this. I hope they're not hired on to some other cities. So anyway, and so I'm sitting there thinking, we have Medishare. All right, do we have a high deductible? Yes, we have a high deductible. Does that mean they'll inhibit us from going to urgent care because we'll pay out of pocket? Yes, absolutely. Do we still have our primary care physician? Yes. Do we still have our allergist? Yes. Do we still have our pediatrician? Yes. We have all those people. Does that mean we're going to pay more up front on the front end, say $5,000 to even $10,000? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what the deductible is, frankly. All I want for healthcare is for catastrophic. I'm absolutely okay paying $5,000 to $10,000 in deductible before my health insurance kicks in if I only have to pay $350 a month for catastrophic coverage. I'm absolutely okay with that. And I hate to say it, but you should be okay with that too. Because the alternative is that you're going to sit there and you're going to still stay at your crappy old job, but now you're going to pay $400 or $500 a month in coverage, and you're still going to have a deductible of $2,500 to maybe even $5,000 for a family. And yet you're still driving yourself insane or being miserable in your crappy old job, all because you need health care. There are ways you can have catastrophic coverage, and that's what health insurance should be about. You should pay for the guy to see you, the pediatrician to see you. You should pay for the dentist to clean your teeth. So my daughter went and got her teeth cleaned the other day. It costs $100. We don't have dental insurance anymore. It costs $100. If she needs something more important than that, it's going to stink. We're going to pay out of pocket. Yes, that's absolutely true. That stinks. But guess what? We're paying $350 a month in order to be able to have that flexibility. Now, that might not be worth it for you. I don't know. And again, with Medishare, if you have pre-existing conditions, it's going to be harder because they don't want to take you on. I get that too. If you got pre-existing conditions, that might change things for sure. But if you're in healthy shape and you're sitting there at 58 years old, you're like, man, I just want to get out of this crappy old job, but I can't because healthcare, and you got to commute an hour and a half each way. I'm just telling you, rethink your priorities. But this is so new and phenomenal of the history of mankind that we're tied to the company because of healthcare. I don't get it. And secondly, all right, if you don't want to be tied to your current company, but you still want healthcare, go find another job. Yes, you might take a pay cut. Is that the worst thing that ever happened? No, it's not. I mean, yes, you might get less benefits. Is that the worst thing that ever happened? No, it's not. Again, your situation might be different than mine for sure. It might come to be where I have to file a claim Medishare for catastrophic coverage that they didn't cover as much as I thought. Oh, well, whoop-de-doo. In that case, I'll go bankrupt. Is that the worst thing that ever happened? No, I'm sorry. We did not create the system. The system created us. We are the people bearing the brunt of this insane system that the freaking Democrats and Republicans both combined put on us. So you deal with a system that's done. George Bush made it harder for people to file bankruptcy. Look, I was a big W fan. I worked for that guy on a volunteer basis in 2000 and 2004. We protested, my daughter, when she was brand spanking new, and my wife, when we lived in Phoenix, down the state capitol against Al Gore's thing. We were big on the Bush train, I'm telling you. In hindsight, that Bush and Obama are two peas of the same pot. No other way around that. None of them did anything better to help the regular working people of America. None of them did. None of them at all. John Boehner, he was all against marijuana legalization, which made countless numbers of people go to jail because of the carrying weed on their body, whether by plant or by just their choice, but they're smoking dope. And yet John Boehner, who was freaking Speaker of the House, right, or the House Majority Leader or something like that, he was all against that. So how many people went to jail, separated from the family, went to jail for carrying insignificant amounts of dope? And now John Boehner is all for legalization of marijuana. Why? Because he getting paid big as a lobbying for marijuana legalization. Yes, that's the Republican side. Democrats, Obama, the hospitals loved Obama. How many hospitals are putting people bankrupt because of the hospitals, because they're charging, because the hospital said, we have a mandate. And the insurance companies loved Obama too, because Obama said, you have to buy the insurance company's products. The same thing. Don't go in your politics saying it's just Republicans or just Democrats. They're both two peas of the same pod. This is not a political rant. And don't even say, oh, Elizabeth Warren warned us about this. No, she didn't. She made fraudulent stuff up with her book on how healthcare was making most people go bankrupt. It's a fraud. It's a lie that should have eliminated her from any contingency on top of her fake heritage stuff. It didn't. It's the way politics is run, my friends. John Boehner, Paul Ryan, that guy's going to make a nice mint being a lobbyist too. We know this. Bush, he did nothing except hurt the bankruptcy laws, that's for sure. And look, I was all for, I'm telling you, I was all for that. I said, all these people filing bankruptcy. I'm sure there's some bad people doing it, but if you got healthcare issues and you can't afford it, now they make it that much harder to file bankruptcy. Well, whose fault's that? Is that your fault? No, it's the system's fault. It's the way the system's set up. That's all there is to it. And so if you got to file bankruptcy because that's your only solution, man, whatever. I don't have any problem with that at all. Now, if you go around credit card debt, fully aware that you're going to file bankruptcy, well, that's fraudulent, and you should be held accountable for that for sure. But if you're just a working guy, you get hurt on the job, and your company doesn't pay for your health insurance, and now you got $150,000 of debt, man, I got no qualm with you if you file bankruptcy, none whatsoever. Or if you got credit card, or you got loans on your or bad credit score because a health insurance provider, after a year, they put a thing on your credit saying you didn't pay, which is what happened. We didn't get on our credit history. I just got a bill 3 weeks ago from a guy from a health insurance provider, healthcare provider, from back in January of last year. It's $350. And what, you can just send me a bill, 12 months later? That's for $300 saying I owe this? What's that about? And if I don't pay, it's going on my credit history. So I paid because I'm up against it. I don't want anything on my credit report. Maybe that's what I'm saying. That's the system we're dealing with, my friends. You got to look out for you, which is number one. And so that means you say, I've quit my crappy old job. I'm not going to work for the man anymore because he's putting me in the grave. And on top of that, I'm going to go, and I'm not even have health care anymore. I'm going to do it, basically hoping I never get hurt. But if I do get hurt and I got to go to the ER, well, it sucks to be me, but then it sucks to be the hospital that provides the coverage. But guess what? I've been subsidizing these people anyway. We've been subsidizing the hospitals. We've been subsidizing the pharmaceutical companies. We've been subsidizing the banks. We've been subsidizing the bankers. Who do you think got benefits of the bankruptcy law that Bush signed into being? It's the bankers, man. The people who loan the money. Because it makes it harder for people to file for bankruptcy. Who do you think benefit from Obama's health care, ACA? It's the insurance companies and the hospitals. Who worked for freaking Citigroup under the bank under Clinton? Who is Clinton's Secretary of Treasury? Oh, Robert Rubin. Who is Bush's Secretary of the Treasury? Oh, Hank Paulson. Where did Paulson come from? Goldman Sachs. Where did Robert Rubin come from? Citigroup. And you're going to tell me these people care two squats about you. That's Republicans and Democrats. So this is the equal opportunity bashing. So let's go back down to the gist of this rant. If you're sitting there saying, I can't quit, and I'm an honorable person, I don't want to file bankruptcy, I'm not telling you to go file bankruptcy. I'm saying, look at the probabilities, not just anecdotal evidence. I know someone right now whose mom is in a nursing home at a cost of $8,000 a month. I know that for a fact. I know that happens. Does that mean I dismiss that from happening? No. It just means the likelihood of that happening to the average person is still minimal. I know people who have that. It doesn't mean it's likely to happen. That's anecdotal evidence to say, oh yeah, because Mrs. Smith over there has health insurance needs, I need to make sure I'm covered because I could be like Mrs. Smith. Yes, you could. You could also fall off the ladder while you're putting up Christmas tree lights and kill yourself too. You do not build your financial planning based on that and the unlikely of that happening. But it does happen. It does. But don't build your financial planning based on that. Now, if you can't sleep at night because you're worried about it, that's a whole different thing. Same like with investments. Yes, you should be in the stock market. If you can't sleep at night, then you should not be in the stock market. That's all there is to it. If you can't sleep at night because you're worried about a healthcare issue, then stay at your company with healthcare. I got no problem with that. But if you're sitting there thinking, I know some guy named Mrs. Smith, or some guy told me about Mrs. Smith who's paying $8,000 a month in healthcare costs. I better stay at my crappy old job, which is literally putting me in the ground. That's not empirical evidence. That's anecdotal evidence. Empirical evidence, we actually know the vast majority of people don't spend very much in healthcare. We know for a fact, number two, the vast majority of people, their number one expenditure in retirement is by nothing even comes close is the cost of housing. Nothing comes close. That's empirical evidence. That is not anecdotal. Empirical means what we've observed. Anecdotal means just I know somebody. Anecdotal doesn't mean anything. Empirical evidence is what we've observed. Looking at it, we've done studies and studies and studies. It's empirical now to say the likelihood of you spending less in retirement is high. The likelihood of you spending more in retirement is low. Empirical evidence. Is there anecdotal evidence that suggests otherwise? Absolutely. Should you build your plan on the anecdotal or on the empirical? You build it on the empirical because that's the best evidence you have. Now, if you know and your own study says, hey, we have 8,000 people in my family, the vast majority of them live till they're 100 years old, and the vast majority also have Alzheimer's. Well, guess what? You probably need long-term care insurance coverage, right? Why? Because you have empirical and anecdotal evidence of your family genes. I got no problem with that. You can have anecdotal and empirical at the same time. You've observed people in your family needing health care in retirement. I get that without question, or need long-term care, or needing health insurance, or need all that stuff. But you don't build your retirement plan on anecdotal evidence. Build it on empirical evidence. Employees Benefit Research Institute, EBRI, HHS, Health and Human Services, BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, CES, a Consumer Expenditure Survey. All these groups have studies that show you that the likelihood of you spending significant amounts of money on healthcare in retirement is minimal. Now, what does that mean for you if you're not retired yet? What's the and I don't know the answers, but what's the likely if you're 60 years old, if you're 60, that you're going to have a significant health expense between now and you hit Medicare? You got to answer that before you stay in your crappy old job. You have to answer. Frankly, I don't know the answer. My inclination is not very high. But I mean, I'm sure there are people who do spend a significant amount of money at 60 years old, out-of-pocket expenses on healthcare. But what's the likelihood of that happening? What's the empirical evidence? I bet it's not that high. And again, we look at the EBRI, we can see the beginning of studies that show that, actually. That's the evidence that we've seen, and the evidence I'm willing to hang my hat on and say what you should do is get catastrophic coverage through a group like Medishare, high deductible health plan with a high deductible and HSA, all that stuff. And now there's no individual mandate. Now that Trump has made it a little bit more liberal, meaning more free for healthcare costs, and more groups can get together for catastrophic. In my estimation, you should get catastrophic coverage when you're 60 years old to cover the likelihood that you have that. I mean, again, I don't know what the evidence is. Let's say 1 in 50 event of you having $150,000 healthcare cost. Absolutely, you should get that without question. You'd be insane not to. It's no different than having life insurance when you're 35 years old and having 2 kids. The likelihood of you dying is minimal, but if you did die, it would be painful to your surviving spouse and children. So you get life insurance, and it should be rather cheap because, again, the likelihood of that happening is minimal. The same thing would happen with health insurance. When they get rid of the mandates on me having maternity coverage, why would I need maternity coverage, for heaven's sake? And they allow people to do a cafe style, pick and choose the coverage that they need, it's going to reduce the premiums. Without question, that's going to happen. Now, why should I provide you for your maternity coverage? If you want maternity coverage, you should pay for it. If I want, I don't know, whatever coverage I want to get my teeth whitened or whatever once a year, I should pay for that. You shouldn't pay for me to get my teeth whitened, and I shouldn't pay for you to have maternity coverage. Now, if you have pre-existing, this is different. But if you don't have pre-existing and you're 60 years old and you're sitting there saying to yourself, man, I'm going to I want to get at my crappy old job, but I can't do it because of healthcare costs. You got to answer two things. Are you looking at anecdotal evidence or you're looking at empirical? Number two, what is the likelihood of you having a catastrophic event that's going to bankrupt you? You got to answer that. And I don't know the answer to that. My own observation, now this is my own anecdotal based what I think is somewhat empirical, but I would never go to the mat and say that in front of a court of law, is that I think the vast majority of people overestimate, have an over sense of fear of the health insurance bill they're going to pay or the healthcare costs they're going to pay. I bet the vast majority of people do not go to a significant provider for health services when they're in the 60 years old, especially nowadays when most people aren't smoking. Most people aren't smoking. Most people are eating better. Now, again, we're starting to kick the carb thing down the road, which is good. That'll make most people have better heart conditions, better blood pressure, whatnot. But I bet if you're in good shape, you don't smoke, you don't drink like a drunken sailor. I can say that because I was in the Army. I will say drunken infantryman, and you fall what you eat. I bet the vast majority of you are not going to be that in dire need of significant health costs before you hit Medicare. I bet that's true. And so anyway, that's my rant as I'm driving here today from Atlanta. I figured I'd just go off on that little tangent. I hope you reconsider. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you retire. I don't care if you stay at work. However, I hope you revisit this idea that you need to have health care. Remember when healthcare was involved through the employer to begin with? It was only in the 40s because World War II, they had so many mandates on everything. That was the way for unions and companies to offer other benefits because of wage and price controls to get people to join their company and their union because they offered healthcare. So we're only talking, 70 years, that's it. So what did people do before then? And so what's wrong with saying that might not be the best way to provide for this stuff? There might be a better option. And the better option would be, again, going back to the way it used to be, provide for your own coverage, catastrophic stuff, go provide for your out-of-pocket expense when you go get your teeth cleaned, if you need to go to urgent care to get your tongue swabbed for strep throat or whatever, go do that, pay it out of pocket. Yeah, you're going to pay a higher deductible and all that, but guess what? That's the price. If you don't want to pay the higher deductible, then you don't go. And you say, well, I'm sick. Well, when is it we have to go to the doctor every time we get a semblance of sickness? I don't get that. And if you look at the amount of people with various illnesses, you certainly can make a case that we're in better shape physically and emotionally today than we were 30 years ago. So I don't want to hear, oh, we're doing so much better. And I don't know that to be true, actually. A lot of sick, a lot of ill people out there. So the more we go to the doc, maybe the more they're giving us antibiotics and things like that, just as a way to say, well, this could help you, almost like a placebo. I don't know that, but that's, who knows? There might be some validity to that. So, all right, as always, enjoy the rants, I hope. Obviously, you probably won't, but that's fine. You can always subscribe down below. I'd love to hear your comments, questions, concerns down there, and we're going to get back to doing it's a beautiful day here in North Georgia. Oh, my goodness, 66 degrees. The sun is out. Thank you, Lord, for giving me this day, and thank you, Lord, for allowing me to live in America, to have the freedom to go off on a rant like this, to criticize our political well-being, because both these parties are not looking out for us. There's no other way around that. I wish there's an alternative. There's not. I'm not sure who said it. Maybe Ben Franklin. Democracy is a bad system, but it's the best system out there. Whatever that quote was, I couldn't agree more, because I don't know what a better system would be. Just real quick, some of the old Austrian School of Economics professors would say the old Chilean under Pinochet, a benevolent fascist ship, and a fascist is not the same as Hitler. A fascist just is corporatism, essentially, like what we're seeing in China is essentially a fascist state without question. I mean, some would even argue America. I'm not ready to go that, but China says they're communists. They're really fascists, where corporations control everything at the dictate, at the helm of the government. That's truly what a fascist state is. The corporations are running everything at the behest of their political bosses, and that's what Chile had under Pinochet, a base of benevolent fascists, unlike a Hitler fascist, but a Hitler was a socialist. With fascists, i.e., he allowed some people to make money as long as they followed what his dictates were. Of course, I still don't understand why kill the Jews. I don't get the whole thing against Jews. Weird. What have Jews ever done to anybody? I just don't get it. But all right, so we'll talk about that a different day. I was talking to my daughter about that today. I don't get why everyone's all angry at Jews all the time. It's the weirdest thing I've ever known, especially someone who follows the God of Abraham. I don't know how you be angry at Jews, Muslims, or Christians. We all follow the same God. Now, obviously, Jews don't believe in a Trinity. Muslims don't believe in a Trinity. Christians do. God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. But at the end of the day, the book of Abraham is, we all adhere to it, and it seems to me we have a lot more in common than than not. So, all right, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks now.